Hello everyone, myself Paul Mitra. I am a senior faculty in physics at Sri Chaitanya Gosala. So today in this session we will be discussing about an important concept which is called Bohr's atom. Now this is common for you all in physics as well as chemistry. So in physics questions do come from this, and what all things you should be knowing about Bohr's atom, we will try to discuss them in a short span of time, and I will try my level best that the main points, important points are made clear to all of you. Okay. So talking about Bohr's atom, it is a primitive model of the atom which was suggested by Niels Bohr, right? And before him also other theories were given for atoms, like you have heard of the famous plum pudding model given by Thomson or Rutherford's model, but they somehow flopped because they had many loopholes in them. Now after that, even we cannot say that Bohr's atom is completely correct, because this theory, as I said in the beginning, it is a primitive model or a basic model. Later on, when valence shell theory was given for atoms, it was found that it was more accurate compared to this. So Bohr's atom, this basically consists of a single electron species. So Bohr gave his theory for a single electron species. That means an electron is revolving around a dense small nucleus in the atom, right? Now what can be a single electron species? Talking about the most important one, that is hydrogen atom. In hydrogen atom, you know, there is a single electron which is revolving around the nucleus, and the nucleus consists of one proton. Similarly, we can make ions which are also called hydrogen like ions. Why they are called hydrogen like ions? For example, helium atom. We know helium has got 2 electrons, whereas lithium has got 3 electrons. Now if in helium we remove one of the electrons of the atom, then we get He plus ion, which is also a single electron species. Similarly, if we take lithium atom and we remove 2 electrons from it, then it becomes Li double plus ion, which is also a single electron species. So all these type of species, electronic species, single electronic species, they are known as Bohr's atom. And Bohr gave his theory, which we will be understanding what are they through some numerical points. Let's see them one by one. So firstly, Coulomb's law applied to Bohr's atom. So when Bohr said that the single electron is revolving around the nucleus, and when we are talking of this Bohr's atom, suppose it has an atomic number Z. So as I said, this Bohr's atom can be hydrogen atom, for which Z is equals to 1. It can be He plus ion, for which Z equals to 2. It can be Li plus plus ion, for which the atomic number Z equals to 3, and so on. So these all are Bohr's atom. Now when the electron is revolving in circular orbit around the nucleus, then there should be some force which would be providing centripetal acceleration to the electron. This model is very similar, or we can say analogous, with satellites revolving around a planet in circular orbits. But the difference is that in case of satellites, the gravitational pull by the planet provides for the centripetal acceleration. In this case, the electrostatic attraction between the positive nucleus and the negative electron, this provides for the centripetal force, right? So which is in accordance with Coulomb's law. So what we can see from here is, if we consider this particular nucleus, and this nucleus is for any Bohr's atom of atomic number Z, so its charge of the nucleus will be how much? Plus Ze. The charge of the nucleus will become how much? Plus Ze. And if we talk about the charge of the electron has a charge minus E. And if we consider that the electron is revolving around the nucleus in an orbit of radius r, and suppose this orbit we call it as the nth orbit. Why we are calling it as nth orbit? Because following the failure of Rutherford's model, in which Rutherford assumed that electrons are revolving in circular orbits and they will constantly radiate energy and they will spiral and fall into the nucleus. But actually the electrons are not falling in the nucleus, so they should be moving in some stationary orbits or some stable orbits. So those stable orbits, they are found to possess energies of discrete values or fixed values. These are called as stationary orbits, right? So these stationary orbits are assigned some numbers, some integral values, which are called as principal quantum number, which is denoted as n. So we are now talking about the nth orbit. So if the nth orbit is considered and its radius we are denoting as Rn, and the velocity of the electron v vector which I have shown, so if its speed we are taking in the nth orbit as Vn. So what we can write from Coulomb's law? So from Coulomb's law we can say that the magnitude of electrostatic attraction will provide for centripetal force, which will be mass of the electron, Vn square by Rn. This is the formula for centripetal force. So in nth orbit, n is the principal quantum number. What is the expression for force? Coulomb's law we know, 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 Ze into E. We are taking the magnitude because we already know the direction of the force, radially inwards. This value is equal to mvn square by Rn. So from here one Rn cancels, so one expression we get Ze square by 4 pi epsilon naught Rn is equals to me Vn square. Rn cancels, so we can remove this. So this is the first important equation that we get using Coulomb's law. So the electron can stay in fixed orbits which have been assigned quantum number, principal quantum number n, and for the nth orbit, if the radius is Rn and the speed of the electron is Vn, then the Coulombic attraction equals mv square by R. Clear? So this is one thing we should be knowing. Now after this, the next important thing that we should be careful of is quantization of angular momentum. Now we know what is angular momentum. Angular momentum, when a particle is translating, so about a fixed point, if we are seeing a particle which is translating, then its angular momentum is written as linear momentum multiplied by the perpendicular distance. Linear momentum multiplied by the perpendicular distance from the fixed point. What is the fixed point we are taking? If this is the nucleus center, so from here if we see the electron, this electron, it is having linear momentum Pn, which is mass into velocity. So about the center of the nucleus, its perpendicular distance is Rn. So angular momentum is momentum into Rn. Clear? Pn into Rn. Now this quantization of angular momentum is basically in accordance with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Sorry, I am very sorry for that. Please kindly pardon this line. So this is in accordance with de Broglie's hypothesis. De Broglie's hypothesis, where de Broglie suggested that particles which are moving, they also have wave-like property, and for a moving particle which is having a momentum p, its wavelength associated, since it is behaving like a wave, the wavelength associated is given as lambda is equals to h by p, where lambda we call as the de Broglie wavelength of the moving particle. Even it is written as de Broglie, but kindly remember the pronunciation is de Broglie, not de Broglie. So lambda is equals to h by p for a moving particle. If it behaves like a wave, this is the wavelength associated, right? So ln, the angular momentum from here can be written as, since we are talking about the nth orbit, so h by lambda is h by p, so p is equals to h by lambda, so h by lambda n into Rn. Lambda n is the wavelength associated with the wave. Now which wave we will be considering? You can see in this diagram that as the electron is revolving around the nucleus, it should not fall into the nucleus. Why will it not fall in the nucleus? It will not fall only if it does not emit electromagnetic radiations continuously. Okay, so if it has not to radiate energy, that means this orbit should be stable or stationary. So that means this electron wave or the wave associated with the moving electron should be a stationary wave. So the pattern that you can see, it is a stationary wave pattern. So this one is stationary wave pattern in nth orbit for the electron. So the electron is behaving as a stationary wave, and suppose this wave has n pulses. Okay, so if it has got n pulses, since it is in the nth orbit, so we associate that there are n pulses associated with this. Now if we stretch it and open it, so we can say that the total length L, the total length of the orbit will be how much? We can write it as 2 pi into Rn. If the radius of the orbit is Rn, then the length of the orbit will be 2 pi Rn. But this 2 pi Rn, how can we write it in terms of waves? So if it has got n loops or n complete wave pulses, so the length of one wave pulse is lambda. So we can say that this will be equal to n lambda. So if you can see stationary wave with n complete pulses, that means the length of the orbit will become how much? N lambda n. Now going by this, what we can see, the value of radius of the nth orbit can hence be written as n lambda n by 2 pi. So if we now put it over here, Ln, length, angular momentum in the nth orbit, h by lambda n into Rn, and length of the orbit we have seen is 2 pi Rn. So from there we got Rn is n lambda by 2 pi. Now put it over here, what we get? H by lambda n into Rn is n lambda n by 2 pi. So from here lambda n lambda l cancels, so we get the angular momentum as nh by 2 pi, where h is the Planck's constant, n is the principal quantum number, which we can also write as nh bar. H bar is known as the reduced Planck's constant, whose value is h by 2 pi. Clear? So angular momentum is nh bar, where the values of n 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. So we can say that the angular momentum is quantized because it is integral multiple of the reduced Planck's constant. Okay, so that's why it is called quantization of angular momentum. So what Bohr suggested, that the electron can revolve only in such orbits in which it forms a stationary wave pattern consisting of full loops. Okay, so in that only it won't be radiating energy and falling into the nucleus. So these orbits are called as stationary orbits, and the angular momentum for such orbit should be nh bar. Clear? So this is our second equation, which we also know that angular momentum can be written as I said, mvn Rn. Why? Because momentum is equals to m into v. So mvn Rn can be written as n h by 2 pi. This is our second equation. The first equation you saw in the previous slide, this one, it has unknowns v and Rn, and this is the second equation for v and Rn. So when we combine these two equations, then we get the individual values of Vn and Rn. So on combining, when you will combine and see, from equation 1 and 2, we will not be writing the entire form, will not be deriving it completely, you can see by your own. This Rn, it will be obtained as n square by z times a constant which is also denoted as R1. This R1 is nothing but first orbit radius of hydrogen atom. Hydrogen atom means Z is equals to 1. So first orbit radius of hydrogen atom R1. So Rn is n square by Z times of R1. So this radius of the nth orbit is directly proportional to the principal quantum number square and inversely proportional to the atomic number. And this first orbit radius of hydrogen atom, this nearly comes around 0.53 angstrom, but I would suggest that in questions you use 0.5 angstrom. Okay. So first orbit radius, if it is not mentioned, take it as 0.5 angstrom for making the calculations easier. This is what you get, and when you substitute the value of Rn in any of the equations 1 and 2, you will get Vn, and from there you will see that Vn, it is found to be directly proportional to the atomic number and inversely proportional to the principal quantum number of that term orbit, and multiplied by a constant which we denote as V1. This is the speed of electron in first orbit of hydrogen atom, and this value is approximately speed of light divided by 136. Speed of light divided by 136. This is the speed of electron in the first orbit. So Vn becomes Z by n. Understood? So these two important things, that means the speed in the nth orbit is directly proportional to the atomic number and inversely proportional to the principal quantum number n. This should be remembered. Okay. So very important 2 points which you are seeing from here. Now moving on, energy levels in Bohr's atom and electronic transition. Now talking about the energy, if you talk about the energy, as I said that in stationary orbit, if it is the nth orbit, the total energy associated, we denote it as En. Now since the electron has kinetic energy and due to attraction with the nucleus, it will also possess electrostatic interaction potential energy which we denote as Un. So when we use the expression for kinetic energy, we know it is half mvn square, and talking about the potential energy, you know electrostatic potential energy is k q1 q2 by r. K q1 q2 by r. What is k? 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. Charge of the nucleus plus Ze, charge of the electron minus E, divided by distance between or the separation between the nucleus and the electron is Rn. Now here you have to take the sign also. Their force was a vector. We have already taken its direction, so no need of taking sign. But Un is a scalar quantity when you are writing its value k q1 q2 by r. So there you have to take the sign of the charge as well. So it is basically negative. Now we have already obtained the values of Vn and Rn. So you will see a very interesting thing, that putting Vn and Rn values, you will observe a very interesting thing. What is the first observation that you will see? That the total energy of the electron in the nth orbit, it will come exactly half of the potential energy, and it will also be equal to the negative of kinetic energy. Now kinetic energy we know is always positive, and potential energy and Un, these two will be negative. So here potential energy and the total energy both are negative, whereas kinetic energy is positive, and potential energy is half value will be of the total energy, and kinetic energy will be simply the magnitude of the total energy. If total energy is suppose minus 10, then kinetic energy will be plus 10. That's it. That's what I am trying to say. This is first thing which we will be getting. But this expression, this relation will be satisfied only when we take the energy in the nth orbit, which is infinite. If you take this one, continuum, there if the energy is taken as 0, reference is taken as 0 for potential energy, then only we can use this relation. whenever you are taking the reference for potential energy at infinity, that means at infinity if you take the potential energy to be 0, only then you can use this particular relation. Kindly remember this. Clear? One thing you will get this, and second important thing that you will get is, you will see that the energy in the nth orbit, it is directly proportional to z square, it is inversely proportional to n square into E1. E1 is energy of first orbit in hydrogen atom, and this value is obtained, calculated as minus 13.6 electron volt. So energy in the nth orbit is found to be directly proportional to z square, inversely proportional to n square, multiplied by a constant which is the energy of first orbit in hydrogen atom, minus 13.6 electron volt. You can see it from this diagram, the energy level diagram which I have shown over here. So first orbit, this we are taking of hydrogen. If it is hydrogen like, then you will simply multiply it with z square. If I am taking hydrogen like, then it will become what? Z square. Clear? So here we are showing this for hydrogen atom. This is for hydrogen atom. Now first orbit minus 13.6, second orbit minus 13.6 by 2 square, which is minus 3.4, third orbit minus 13.6 by 3 square, which is minus 1.6, approximately minus 1.5 electron volt, you can say minus 1.5 electron volt, n equals to 4 orbit, fifth orbit and so on. They will have different energies. Now one interesting thing you should observe from here, as we are going up, what is happening to the energy? The energy is increasing. Minus 3.4 is more than minus 13.6, minus 1.5 is more than minus 3.4. So energy, as you go up, it increases. Since potential energy is double of En, so potential energy will also increase. That means potential energy and energy both increases with the increase in quantum number. If n increases, these two value will also increase. But kinetic energy is minus of En. So what will happen, as we go up, kinetic energy in the nth orbit, this value decreases. So as we move to higher energy levels, the kinetic energy of the electron will decrease, whereas the potential energy and the total energy will increase. And one more thing, the energy gap between first and second orbit, second and third orbit, you will see that this gap keeps on decreasing. This is a very interesting point and important one. As you move up, you will see that the gap between the energy levels, that keeps on decreasing. And n equals to infinity, we assign, it's not n equals to, actually it is n tends to infinity, we can never obtain. So n tends to infinity, we assign the energy as 0, because if you will put n as infinite, E1 by infinite will become 0. Clear? So now these are the energies in different orbits. Now what happens in such case, as you can see that compared to the ground state, the other energy levels are more. So that means electrons in these orbits are at relatively less stable position compared to ground state. This one, as we call, is this one is ground state, and all the other higher states are known as excited states, right? So electrons in the excited states are relatively unstable, so they will try to transit down, so as to attain stability. And in doing so, when the electron will transit down from higher orbit to lower orbit, Bohr said that energy will be released in form of photons. Energy will be released in form of photons having discrete energies. Why discrete energies? Because the energy difference between the orbits is also fixed. So when electron transits down from higher orbit to lower orbit, a photon will be liberated, which will be equal to En initial minus En final. So when the electron jumps from initial orbit to final orbit, where n initial is more than n final, then what will happen? photons will be emitted. And we have different series of photons, collection of such photons. For example, if electron transits from all the higher orbits possible to the ground state, then the photons which are emitted, they will consist of a series which is called as Lyman series. In case of hydrogen, it is in ultraviolet region. The wavelengths will be in ultraviolet region of electromagnetic spectrum. When the electron jumps from higher orbits to the second orbit, in that case all the photons that are liberated, in case of hydrogen atom, it is found to be in visible region of electromagnetic spectrum, and they consist of what we call as Balmer series. Similarly, if the electrons transit down to third orbit, then we get Paschen series photons. If it jumps to fourth orbit, we get Brackett series photons. When it jumps to fifth orbit, we say Pfund series. So it should be transiting from higher to lower states, and we get different series. So in hydrogen atom, Lyman, ultraviolet, Balmer, visible, and Paschen, Brackett and Pfund series photons are in infrared region. So these things should be remembered. Clear? So here, these important points that we just discussed, we will add one more important point to this. What is that? When we talk about the wavelength of the photon, now we know energy of the photon is also given as hc by lambda. Energy of the photon is given by hc by lambda, and we saw the value of En. En is how much? Minus 13.6 z square by n square. So if you substitute the value as, if you take the value of En and you substitute it here, so you will get 13.6 z square by, you can take n this value common, so in bracket you will have 1 by n final square minus 1 by n initial square. When you will substitute En initial and En final, and because of this minus sign they will get turned. So from here we can write 1 by lambda of the photon as r z square 1 by n final square minus 1 by n initial square. So this is the wavelength of the photon. Now you may think that from where this extra r came. This r is what we call as the Rydberg's constant, Rydberg's constant. And how it is related, you can see from here. If I substitute E photon as hc by lambda and 1 by lambda, we have written like this. So r into h into c, this value equals 13.6 electron volt. Very, very important point. R into H into C is 13.6 electron volt. So the Rydberg's constant R 13.6 electron volt divided by Hc. So when you make suitable approximations, the approximate value of R comes out as 1.1 into 10 to the power 7 meter inverse. You can remember this value, 1.1 into 10 to the power 7 meter inverse, which is called as the Rydberg's constant, or otherwise R into H into C is 13.6 electron volt. H is the Planck's constant, C is the speed of light. Clear? So 1 by lambda photon emitted, its wavelength Rz square 1 by n final square minus 1 by n initial square. So it comes from this particular equation. I hope this is clear to all of you. So let's quickly answer a few questions based on this, and we will see what all concepts that we have studied, how they are used over here. First question, you can see, how are the following quantities dependent on the principal quantum number n in the Bohr atom? They are talking of the frequency of revolution of electron. They are asking the average magnetic moment due to the orbiting electron. Well, when we talk about the frequency of the electron in the nth orbit, frequency can be said as 1 by time period, and we know what is time period. If an electron is revolving in a orbit of principal quantum number n, time period is 2 pi r by v. Why? Total path length 2 pi r n divided by speed. So this is the time period, so 1 by time period will be this. Now they are asking how it is dependent on n. We just saw that Vn is inversely proportional to the quantum number and Rn is directly proportional to n square. So from here the frequency we can say is directly proportional to 1 by n cube. Clear? So this is the first one. Talking about average magnetic moment due to the orbiting electron. Orbiting electron will act as a current. Why? Because rotating charge in one time period, it will constitute an average current, which is charge upon time period. So due to that current there will be a magnetic field and it will also behave like a magnetic dipole. Rotating charges behave like magnetic dipole, so they have magnetic moment. Now for this magnetic moment, if we denote this magnetic moment as capital M, so in rotating charges you would have studied this dipole moment of rotating charges, very interesting formula. Magnetic moment divided by angular momentum is given as the total rotating charge divided by 2 times the total rotating mass. So m by L is q by 2m. This thing should be remembered for rotating charges. So if we write it over here, so we will say mn divided by angular momentum. What is rotating? Electron. So its magnitude of charge we will take here. If I am taking the magnitude value, E divided by 2m. So from here the magnetic moment, we are writing the expression also, we will write it as E by 2me. Angular momentum we saw for Bohr's atom, it is nh by 2 pi. So directly nh by 2 pi. So you are getting from this question an interesting formula also, n into Eh by 4 pi me. So we can see from here that the magnetic moment in the nth orbit is directly proportional to the principal quantum number. Mn is directly proportional to the principal quantum number. And one interesting thing which I would like to add here, if you take first orbit n equals to 1, then what will you get? It as Eh by 4 pi me. E is a constant, we know, 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19. Mass of electron approximately 9 into 10 to the power minus 31 kg. Planck's constant 20 by 3 into 10 to the power minus 34. I am repeating, we take generally h as 6.6, but we are, while solving questions in physics, take h as 20 by 3 into 10 to the power minus 34 SI units. So when you will put all these values, you will get this value, n equals to 1. So the first orbit magnetic moment, average magnetic moment, this is known as, very important name, sometimes they can ask, this question can be asked, this is known as Bohr's magneton. This Bohr's magneton, Mn equals to 1 Eh by 4 pi me. When you are asked paramagnetic materials, you have studied in chemistry also, the unit of the magnetic moment, Bohr magneton, Bm, that is this only. The first orbit magnetic moment for the electron in the Bohr's atom. Clear? So this is the first question, and in that question we have given some additional information also, right? Moving to next question. So second question, potential energy of electron in first excited state of He plus ion. Now see the important things, He plus means Z is equals to 2. First excited states are above the ground state. First excited state means n equals to 2. They are asking the potential energy. First of all, I told you that energy is half of potential energy. So potential energy will be equal to 2 times of the energy. So we are talking of E2. So 2E2. Now talking about E2, what is the value of E2? I said minus 13.6 Z square by n square electron volt. That's it. So put n as 2 and Z also as 2. So 2 square cancels. So directly how much we will get? Minus 13.6 into 2. So minus 13.6 into 2, which becomes minus 27.2 electron volt. So minus 27.2 electron volt will be the energy. That is the third option. Understood? U2 is equals to 2E2. E2 value we saw here, minus 13.6, Z square by N square. 2 square cancels. So minus 27.2. Moving to next question. What is the ratio of longest member of Balmer series of hydrogen atom to the limiting member of Paschen series of Li++? Now remember, whenever they use the word longest member, it means lambda max. And we know that wavelength of photon is hc by energy of photon, because energy of photon is hc by lambda. So it is inversely proportional. So this means lambda photon will be maximum if energy of photon is minimum. So energy photon minimum means the electronic transition takes place between the closest orbits. So that means when they are talking of Balmer, so Balmer final orbit where the electron should jump is 2. So where should it jump? Minimum energy difference will be from n equals to 3. So when we talk of delta E minimum, so the transition should take place from initial value should be n final plus 1 to n final. So n final plus 1 to n final. So this means lambda max, if we talk of Balmer, so n final is 2, so you should jump from where? 3 to 2. Simple thing. So what we will write this value as 1 by lambda max Balmer, in which hydrogen atom. Substitute the value R Z square, Z is 1, and I said 1 by n final square minus 1 by n initial square. This is the expression. So this value, if you put 1 by 4 minus 1 by 9, so this will become 5 by 36, 5R by 36. Now next thing they say, limiting member. What do we mean by limiting member? Remember, limiting member means the wavelength which is produced when the electron can jump from the highest possible state, that is from infinity. So when you jump from infinity to the final orbit of that series, it is called as the limiting member, and this is also the shortest member. So lambda, whenever they say limiting, it has the largest energy difference because you are jumping from infinity. So lambda limiting is also called as lambda minimum of the series. So now here limiting member they are asking of Paschen series of Li++. So lambda minimum of which series? Paschen of Li++. So what we will write from here? R. Now for Z square, lithium we have 3 square, 1 by n final square minus 1 by n initial square. In Paschen finally you jump to where? 3, and for limiting where from you are jumping? Infinity. So 1 by infinity becomes 0, 1 by 3 square will cancel. So 1 by lambda, I am sorry for this, 1 by lambda will be this. So 1 by lambda minimum of Paschen in lithium plus is equals to R. So 1 by lambda max is 5R by 36 and 1 by lambda minimum here is R. So they are asking the ratio of these two. So what will it become if you take the ratio? So this was 1 by lambda, so it will get turned, so it will become how much? 36:5. So required ratio will be how much? 36:5. 1 by lambda max is this, so lambda max Balmer will be 36 by 5R and lambda min will be equal 1 by R. So 36 by 5R divided by 1 by R, what is the answer we will get? 36:5. I hope these questions are clear to all of you. So here we will be ending the session. I hope the things that I have explained over here, these are clear to all of you. So okay, thank you.